Hello and welcome to this lesson. In this lesson we will be going over how to deploy chatscrum in our Kubernetes cluster. Chatscrum is an app that helps teams work together with different features like drag and drop, sprint planning and chat. We will be deploying chatscrum in our Kubernetes cluster and also create a project on chatscrum after our deployment is done. So let's get started. Firstly, we will head over to the repository in other to get chatscrum source code. I already have access to the repository. I will copy the HTTPS link for the repository. In the terminal first you should install git in other to use the git command. If you are running a CentOS machine you can use the command yum install git. For Ubuntu or Debian OS use apt install git. I already have git installed on my machine. Let's use the git clone command with our repository link to clone the repository into our machine. I will enter my GitLab username and password. This will take couple of minutes to get the project on my machine. Now it is done, I will go into the Scrum folder and do ls. Here we can see all the files our application is using. To begin we will need to build the image for the application. I will open the Docker file to see if any changes need to be made. All looks good. Save and exit the file. Next we need to set the API endpoint for our application in the environment file. Our Kubernetes cluster is already running with a worker node and master node. Using the kubectl get nodes command, we can see all the nodes in the cluster, both nodes are up and ready. We can also use the -o option to see more details about our nodes. I will copy the IP address for our master node. The reason we use this IP is because, after deploying our application into our cluster, our application can only be accessible through our master node. I will open the environment.ts. As we can see we already have some configurations like the domain protocol set to HTTP. I will replace the IP here with my master node IP address which we copied earlier. Paste and save the file. Alright, we will go ahead and build the image with the command docker build -t and the image name. I will call the image chatscrum with the tag latest. Okay, this should take few minutes to complete. If you already have an image built you can skip this step. While our image is building, let's head over back to our application folder and see the configuration already set for our database. I will go to the YAML files folder. Then open my SQL folder. Here you can see the database deployment file and service. Open the deployment file. We are using MySQL version 8. We will also take note of the database root password. We will go ahead and copy the password because we will use it to log in into the database. Okay, I go back to our main directory and also take a look at the configuration file for our application backend, which is the settings.py file. I will open the file. Here we can see different configurations for our application have already been set. But we are interested in the database connection configuration. Scroll down and look for it. As you can see we have some configurations preset. We won't need to make modifications to the database configuration. We'll go with this parameters already set. I will copy it so that I can reference it later. Okay, our image is done building. We will push the image to our Docker repository. This image will be pulled later on during our deployment. The push will take some time to complete. Remember to tag your image and log into your repository before you push it to the remote repository. I will be pushing mine to Docker Hub. It is also a public repository. Now I will go over to our application YAML file which is in chatscrum deployment directory. I will open the deployment file here and change the image to the latest image which I have pushed earlier. Save and exit the file. Alright, we are ready to deploy our application in the cluster. Firstly, we will deploy the database. To do this, we will go over to my SQL folder and run the command kubectl apply -f.recursive and we will add the recursive option so that we can run all the YAML files together. The pods and service have been created for MySQL. So kubectl get pods. As we can see the pod is running. Okay, let's go into the pod. Kubectl exec-it and the pod name the shell name. Go into the database using the command mysql-u then the username and -p, hit enter. We are prompted to enter a password. Enter the password that has already been set in the deployment file. Now I am logged in. If you remember earlier we copied the database configuration that was set in our application. So as you can see chatscrum is connecting to the database with the user Linux jobber and this password. You can also see the database name which is newcs. We will go ahead and create the user in the database using the query command create user if not exists with the name of the user and the password for the user. Next, let grant all privileges to the user. I will say grant all privileges to Linux Jabber user. We will also change MySQL native password for the user with the alter query command. Finally, we will create the database with the name set in the configuration file which chatscrum will use. Use the show database command to see all the database already created. Now we will exit from the database pod. We have made the necessary changes to our database. Next, we need to deploy our application. Go over to chatscrum deployment folder and run the command kubectl apply-f with the recursive option and hit enter. OK, the pod and services have been created. I will run the kubectl get pods command to see if our pods are running. You can see the pod has not been created. Let's describe the pod and see what is going on. I will use the kubectl describe pod command and scroll down a bit. We see that an error occurred. From here we also see that this error was caused because the configuration file was to be mounted on a directory that doesn't exist in our node. Alright, use the kubectl get pods-o command and see more information about the pods. I am interested in the node which chatscrum pod is running on. OK, let also get the nodes in our cluster. I will say kubectl get nodes-o wide. I am able to identify the particular node that runs our application pod. I will log into the worker node using the SSH with the username and IP address. Now we are logged in. First, we will go ahead and create the settings file in the Docker mount directory which is located in /opt folder. I will also change the permission on both files using the chmod command. Now I will go over to my GitLab repository and copy the setting.py content in the build files directory. Then paste in the settings cs.py file. Save and then do the same for the settings.ini. Let copy the second settings file content and then paste in the settings cs file. Save the file. You can see we have both configuration in the Docker mount directory. If we need to make any settings modification to our application, we will do them here. OK, I will log out of the worker node. Go ahead and delete the previous pod created so that a new pod can be deployed with the configuration set. Here we can see our pod is running. Copy the name of the new chatscrum pod and run kubectl logs with the name of the pod. As you can see, our application was able to migrate successfully and no error occurred. Now we can go ahead to view our application on the browser. I will run the kubectl get service command to see the ports we have exposed for our application. I will also run the kubectl get node-o command to get the master IP. Your application can only be accessed from the master node IP. Now I will open my browser and paste the IP and port. I am unable to load my application from my browser. This is because my app port is blocked on my machine. I will select my master node and go down to security group. Select the security group and edit inbound rules. I will modify my security group to allow traffic through my app port. I will set the source to anywhere, then save and reload my app. In order to sign up, we will need to create a table from the admin dashboard. We will switch to the terminal and go into the chatscrum pod. Say kubectl exec-it and the name of the pod followed by the shell. In this case we will use bash. Let locate the directory that have the manage.py file. So I will go into the web directory. Inside the web directory, I will go into the www folder and here we can see the Django folder. Cd Django. And go into Scrum Master. Let use the ls command to list the content. Here we have the manage.py file. I will run Python 3.6 manage.py create super user. I will enter a username, in this case I will call mine admin, and then an email and password. It was successful. Save and exit the pod. Back to the browser, let go to admin page and log in. Enter your IP and port then add /admin. I will enter the username and password I created earlier. We successfully logged in. Here we have all the tables created in our database. I will click on chatscrum/app table and then click on the add button. I will use random values to fill the boxes. Now I will save and go back to chatscrum sign up page. Let's go ahead and sign up a new user. Click on the sign up button. I will enter my email address, password and my full name. I will also sign up with a new project. I will call my project Linux Jabber. I have successfully signed up. I will now log in. Enter my email, password and the project name will be Linux Jobber. Click on the login button. OK, have logged in. Let's start a new sprint. Now we can add a task. I will click on the Add Task button and create a task. I will call it my first task. Let's drag the task to a new column. Alright, we have successfully deployed our chatscrum application. Thank you and see you in the next lesson.